which is organized, it's already the fourth one, which is organized by the Visual Culture Research Center. And this year it is curated by the newly launched institution, East Europe Biennial Alliance. And today's event is basically kind of a twofold, double-fold, because we will have a performative lecture titled "The Suits That We Have in Our Country Are Not Suitable for the Tropical Climate," and then it will be followed up by a panel discussion, which I will introduce respectively afterwards. And first of all, I would like to say that these events have been conceived and actually organized by our institutional partner and a member of the East European Alliance, Biyenále Váršava. And I would like to express our thankfulness to the whole Biyenále Váršava team, in particular to Bartosz Fronцков'як and Marta Michalak, who unfortunately couldn't make it for Kyiv, but I'm really thankful to you for making this possible. And the focus and the topicality of today's events is very much in the center of the problematic field that is being tackled within this biennial edition, because we are basically trying through the discursive program as well as through the visual part of the biennial, we are trying to in a way depict or outline the fate of the East European region since the start of the Cold War till the current authoritarian developments, migrant crises, and so on. So it's very much like the topic which we started from at the very opening of the biennial, which is basically the relationships and connections between Eastern Europe and the Middle East and what is in general called the Global South. And this particular performative lecture is actually based on the stories and researches that have been conducted by the long-standing program of within the Biyenále Váršava activities dedicated to exactly the relations between Eastern Europe and the so-called MENA region, which is Middle East and North Africa. And what we will see is basically a kind of a juxtaposition of two narratives. The first one is based on the interviews which were conducted by Inဃa Gajdarovich, who will join us for the panel in collaboration with Beatою Ковальською, which represent the stories of the Palestinians and Lebanese who had been living in Poland in the 70s and the 80s and then came back to Lebanon or Palestine. So based on that, you will see kind of a comparison of the Polish political transformation context and the economic realities of the Middle East in the respective period. And the second narrative was developed by a famous Polish reporter, Max Cegielski. Is basically, this is an archive research which includes visual footage, magazine articles, archival materials of international trade companies, which basically represent some social dimension of this relationship between Eastern Europe and the Middle East behind the official politics of the respective period. And I have also to say that this lecture is basically an international premiere in English, because it was first presented in a bit different form with many actors in Warsaw and in Polish within the framework of the first edition of the Biyenále Váršava in 2019. So I'm happy to introduce our main performance today, Max Cegielski, who is a writer, curator, researcher, and journalist. He's author of many books, just to name a few. Masala, about traveling around India, as well as Drunk on God, a non-fiction on Sufism in Pakistan. At the beginning of 2009, his another book, The Eye of the World, from Constantinople to Istanbul, was published, for which he received the Beata Pavlak Award. He is also a curator of various projects like Global Prosperity at Institut Sztuki Wyspa in Gdansk in 2010, Migrating University of Mickiewicz in Istanbul 2014, and so on. He also co-founded the collective Masala Sound System, and together with this collective he was awarded Anti-Fascist of the year 2004. What a nice title of the award, I have to say. Until 2016, he had been also a co-host at TVP Kultura of the show called Hala Odlotów. I think in English it will be Departures Hall, right? For which he won the Grand Press Award in 2015. And he is associated with the Faculty of Artes Liberales at the University of Warsaw. And Bartosz Frąckowiak is a curator, director, culture researcher, and he is a deputy director of Biennale Warszawa. In 2014-2017, he was the deputy director of the Hieronim Konieczka Teatr Polski in Bydgoszcz and the curator of the International Festival of New Dramaturgies. He graduated from the College of Inter-Area Individual Studies in the Humanities and Social Sciences at the University of Warsaw. And from 2010, he is a programming director of the Hobo Art Foundation, working at the development of performative and visual arts, promoting erasing borders between art and academia in the name of combining creation with research. And he is curator also of many performances and projects, and he is also a theater director and author of many plays. Thank you so much, Bartosz and Max. The floor is yours.
Thank you. So, this is the Free Continents Club. It was a place in Warsaw where, for example, young Arab students would celebrate the end of Ramadan. And this
is the Palestinian student who brought Taekwondo to Poland. He was the first one to teach it in Widzew.
Mm-hmm. And these are the students from Asia and from Africa who studied economic planning in Warsaw. And
these are the 43 wounded Algerian soldiers treated at the Institute of Rheumatology in Warsaw and Schwerin. They fought for Algeria's independence in the years 1954-1962.
And this is Iraq, where the Polish company Dromex built a highway. And those are the Polish workers working in the desert. And
Yeah, and this is the Polish TV celebrity Krystyna Loska. She's at the Poland-Kuwait football game in 1977.
And this is a map of a forgotten world, where Poland, and Ukraine as well, lies in the east and in the south. And the question is, what was going on south from the Iron Curtain before 1989?
Yeah, there's also the question, why did Polish workers build highways in Iraq and not at home?
Yeah. And who popularized sugar beets in Morocco?
Why was Abu Daud shot at the Hotel Victoria in 1981?
And how did the American troops obtain a very detailed plan of Baghdad just prior to the Operation Desert Storm?
Yeah, and Max, finally, where does the Wrocław Zoo fits in this all?
You will see it. But I think that we have to start this story with the Polish Committee for Solidarity with the peoples of Asia and Africa and Latin America. Because in People's Poland, in Socialist Poland before '89, it was the main official organization which with foreign ministry, with all government bodies, yeah, it coordinated the cooperation with the so-called, at this time, developing countries or third world countries, which we now call rather global south, yeah. And the main task of the committee was, according to its charter,
to support the peoples of Asia and Africa in their struggle for national and social liberation from colonialism and neo-colonialism.
We also read in the archives that
immediately after the outbreak of the Middle Eastern conflict, the committee firmly condemned Israeli aggression and extended its full support to the Arab states. On 5 June 1967, it co-organized the first Young and Student Protest Rally in Poland, which was held at the Free Continents Club in Warsaw.
Exactly. So.
I pojechałem z Warszawy do Opola. 4 godzin, najdłuższe 4 godziny w moim życiu. Wyobraź sobie, nikogo nie potrafię mówić yes or no. A ja umiałem tylko tak, nie. 4 dni.
Okay, so I got on the train from Warsaw to Opole. The trip took 4 hours, the longest 4 hours in my life. Get this, no one even knew the words yes or no. And all I could say was tak, nie. I'd only spent 4 days in Warsaw. Totally scared. When I got off the train, I said, home student. But nobody understood me. The moron who took me to the station in Warsaw didn't think to write any phrases down for me. I managed to find the academy. Yeah, that was a long time ago. It's different when I remember it now. Yeah, and I go in and say, me Palestine.
Nie rozumiem.
Finally, some girl comes along. I go. Excuse me, speak English? Oh my God, white angel came. Like she was this white angel. Do you know Arabs? Yeah?
Yeah. You know, my mother liked him straight off, but Dad, not so much. You know, foreigners, people said all sorts of things about them. And I don't know, my dad, he didn't want him coming to see me. But when we got married, that's when he realized that it was for real, you know? And not just so he could get his papers. Because some of the guys just wanted citizenship, you know, papers. And I guess that some of the girls figured that they could get some money out of it, or, you know, or something. You had those kinds of marriages too.
Those were quotes taken from interviews we conducted in Lebanon with Beatою Kovальською and Інґа Гайдаровіч. Inga is somewhere in the darkness there. In 2018 and 2019. We spoke to a few Palestinians and one Lebanese who had studied and worked in Poland in the 70s and 80s.
And we also spoke to Marta, the Polish wife of Tarek, one of the Palestinians. So I'm pretending that I'm her now. I'm Marta. And me as Marta. I didn't really notice him so much as his clothes, you know? Because, like here, on this picture, he was wearing sneakers and tattered pants. Not because it was the fashion, but because they were the only pair he had, yeah? They were worn through, you know, like with the big holes everywhere, yeah? And also he had a pink top on, you know, like a guy dressed in pink. I'd never seen anything like this before, never. And the coat, also he had this like really long coat and he was looking very, very smart. So, there he was. And I'm just looking at him and I don't know whether to feel sorry for him or not, yeah? And his hair was, you see, like here, it was curly. It was like, I don't know. And, you know, the way he dressed, the way he looked, I just stared at him and I said, hi.
Yeah, that's how me and Marta met.
But now let's get back to the official archives and we have this.
Yeah, so there is a very intense exchange in progress. You see the exchange in progress, whose outcome we are as yet unable to grasp.
It was remarked by Minister Winiewicz, as you can see, at a conference. It was a special conference of the Polish ambassadors who are working in the Arab states. And Director Żuławski, he replied.
Yeah, so our partners in the Arab states, they should make to realize that covering the cost of education, around 12,800 per student, according to US estimates, is a considerable help to their countries of origin. We have granted some 800 scholarships to students from Arab countries.
Yeah, and this conference was held at the very end of 60s, exactly after Poland broke, diplomatic relationships with Israel. Yeah, it was the beginning. And the number of Arab students would later really increase, reaching nearly 4,000 by the early 80s.
Większość pytają, a jak twoja rodzina akceptowała żonę? Normalnie. Moja rodzina są otwarte. Może, że jestem otwarty, tak, dlatego, że moja rodzina jest taka otwarta.
Okay, this is Palestinian. I was given a scholarship to study in Poland. I'm no great freedom fighter, so I didn't get a scholarship from the Palestine Liberation Organization. Yeah, but my uncle was a leader, so I got the scholarship. I graduated from school. Do you want to go to study? I said I did. It was my good luck that I ended up in Poland, because I had three options. Italy. But there was something I didn't like about Italy. And Pakistan. Pakistan, I want to go to Europe, not to Pakistan. I left in 75 on a scholarship to Łódź. They sent us to Łódź first to learn Polish. A 9-month preparatory course, some Polish history too, things like that. But there was a problem. I didn't see what use an MA in economics from a socialist country would have in Lebanon, which was a free market economy, a liberal economy basically. What career would I have? That's why I switched to Mediterranean archaeology. Poland was, it belonged to the Warsaw Pact, and socialists and communists were helping our revolution. The PLO. Yeah, that's why nearly every year 30 or 40 students would study at the expense of the Polish government. Yeah, sure, there was propaganda. They showed us these films about North Korea, how the roses don't bloom without Kim Il-sung say so. That sort of crap, you know. It was propaganda, Max.
It was.
And we knew it, but we also knew. I felt that the Polish people were miserable. But Poland was, a vassal state. The Soviet Union was calling the shots, right?
Mhm.
Polish people were happy when they saw someone smoking Marlboro. They would ask you for the packet, so what did that mean? It showed that Polish people were kept on a tight leash. The Poles were really nice. They never had a problem with us being Arabs, but they were strange. They kept asking us. This is really interesting. They would ask us, "Do you have potatoes in Lebanon?"
Potatoes.
Yes. "Do you drink milk?"
Milk.
Milk.
No.
I mean, Poles were closed. What's the word? They were cut off. They had no contacts with our other nations. They didn't know anything about us, right? So they were always asking questions. So some weird ones sometimes. About potatoes, or
Weird.
eggs, or milk, or like
Camels.
this kind of stuff. We'll come back to camels later. Funny questions like that. But they were very nice. I don't know how much the culture has changed now. They had communism back then, and now they are in the European Union. But I heard they have these racist movements now.
Yeah.
That's what I heard.
And that's true. And already in the 60s, 70s and 80s, the Polish Committee of Solidarity, they were organizing, as you have seen, a lot of contests, some, like asking questions about Africa, expositions and so on, like trying to teach Polish people about different cultures, about Arab countries, about Africa, Asia, and so on. But the problem was how to propagate this idea of the cooperation, not only in Poland, but also abroad. So that's how the magazine, this one, called Polish Review, how it was organized, it was published, and showing images of modernization in Poland, especially about industrialization, but also pictures of Poles working abroad. And the magazine had two different versions. One was Polish Review, which was in English, and the other one was called La Revue Polonaise, and it was in French. And the magazine was printed in Poland and being distributed through the embassies, distributed in north of Africa, in Asian countries, in now so-called MENA countries, Global South, you can say. So really it was like this, that the readers in, Tunis, Damascus, Delhi, they were given all these images of modernization. And for example, the articles were like this: Poland has never been a colonial power, yeah? And what's more, it too had long fought for its freedom like the newly independent states of Asia and Africa. And one of the articles, this one, Textiles for the Tropics, read.
Various types of textiles are manufactured in this country. You will find among them the popular kretons, bed linen materials, shirt poplins, self-color and multicolor textiles, and dyed flannel, all made of pure linen, cotton and wool. Specialists from the Institute of the Textile Industry and the Central Laboratory of the Textile Industry know that providing textiles for the tropics is by no means a simple matter. especially if textiles for clothing are involved.
Because tastes and likings in this respect evidently vary according to climate and habits, as well as tradition. These problems have been the subject of careful probing by representatives of Poland's foreign trade and textile industry in African and Asian countries over the past few years. They go there to complete their theoretical background with direct observation and personal contact. The demand should be addressed by both a solid business calculation and a full knowledge of life on the African and Asian continents.
Yeah, the carrying out of orders is given much thought and time by factory managers, engineers, artists, and specialists in all stages of the textile manufacturing process. These are very complex problems requiring close collaboration by all parties involved.
But the authorities of socialist Poland were also keen to understand the developing countries and to work out some methods of cooperation, not when it comes to textiles, but in economics too. So listen to this.
As we were discussing one of my economic recommendations, a senior official ironically remarked that, given how complicated the matter was, I should perhaps recommend changing the system altogether. I replied that when a country wants to change its system, it doesn't bring in foreign advisors, but stages revolution instead.
It was a quotation from Michał Kalecki. You've seen a cover of his book on the screen. And Kalecki, he was one of the co-founders of so-called Polish School of Development. And Polish School of Development was really interesting because it proposed a sort of post-colonial model of cooperation with the developing countries. And these economists, like Kalecki, they did not seek to impose ready-made solutions, but following really extensive research, they advocated a mixed economy that took into account the cultural and historical considerations and proposed measures that drew on both socialism and capitalism as well.
Is it this X?
Yeah, that's an X that we'll talk more about later. And very similar, I think, post-colonial approach was adopted by Polish architects and urban planners as well. For example, Wojciech Zabłocki, he designed the Olympic Center in Latakia. There was also Henryk Roller, he drafted a master plan for Aleppo. There were others, working in Tunis, working in Algiers. And this subject was explored in a very interesting way by Łukasz Stanek. He was here at the Kyiv Biennial, so I hope that you heard his speech. And these photos are all from Łukasz Stanek exhibition. It was called PRL Trademark. Yeah, but what is I think really interesting that all these architects, they cooperated with the local colleagues to build new cities, housing estates, etc. And they were trying to fit, to combine the modernization with the Islamic culture and with the tradition. And unlike Western advisors, they were not practicing sort of, architectural colonization of these newly independent states, but they really tried to come up with some, like new version of modernity that will be good for a local context, yeah. And I'm not sure really if it was just simply professional approach or was it already a post-colonialism.
pustynia libijska. Tak tu było od tysięcy lat. W rozrzuconych na pustkowiu osiedlach odległych o setki kilometrów w ten sposób czerpano ze studni życiodajną wodę. Pracowity i wierny osiołek uważa, że czas skończyć dniówkę. Ślad nieznany dotychczas na szlaku karawan. Stwory, którym się dziwiły początkowo nawet flegmatyczne wielbłądy. Maszyny i ludzie przyjechali z odległej Polski. Przed 1,5 rokiem nasz Cegow zawarł kontrakt na budowę zbiorników wodnych i rurociągów w 12 miejscowościach Libii, 1000 kilometrów od stolicy kraju Trypolis. Polanda Quays, Polska dobra, tak tutaj mówią na widok Polaków. W libijskiej pustyni pracuje ekipa złożona z blisko 200 osób, polskie maszyny, polscy fachowcy. Studnie sięgnęły 120 metrów pod pustynny piasek. Silniki dieslowskie i stacje pomp wyręczyły spracowane osiołki. W 12 miejscach libijskiej Sahary kobiety arabskie odkręcają kran z krystalicznie czystą wodą. Kiedyś graniczyłoby to z cudem. Dzisiaj normalnie ładuje się na głowę wiadro wody, którą Polacy wydobyli z dna Sahary. Sahara.
So, I'm not sure what is your feeling, but my problem with this footage is that it's...
maybe Max, we should ask them about their feelings.
Yeah, maybe we can talk about it during the panel, yeah? Because, you know, because, but just consider this, yeah? I think that this is like a combination of Orientalism, you know, like Edward Said book and his idea that during colonization, but not only during colonization, but in the texts and images and so on, that European imperial powers were Orientalizing, yeah? And here we have this combination of some elements of socialism, but again it's a clash of modernization and tradition, yeah? So I think it's not...
I think you're just, it's super problematic what you are saying right now.
Yes,
you're
yeah,
like
of course.
enforcing some kind of like the fault on...
yeah, but I mean we'll still have
I'm not
40 minutes, you know, about it. So, and you know, I really don't know the answer. I mean, you can see the exhibition just here, a really interesting exhibition organized by Budapest Biennale by Eszter and Zoltan about trans-periphery movement. And, you know, it's still a huge question how we can call this cooperation, yeah? How we should describe all these elements. But, let's come back to the ambassadors. Comrade Fabiański and others attending the conference, they were, I think that's the most important thing, that they were really aware of the economic importance of the Arab states.
We need to be proactive when it comes to trade with the Arab states, as they are the market for our machinery. Nearly 50% of the specialists we have sent to work abroad are employed in the Arab states, and the number is increasing.
Yeah, and the same guy, Comrade Fabiański, he was also in favor of signing an agreement with Libya. Libya was very important in economic terms because it had petrodollars, yeah, and needed doctors, nurses for its hospitals, engineers to build the roads, etc. And already in the 70s, there were so many Poles employed in the Arab countries that there was a special manual that was written for them. It was like, as you see in the cover, it was like the advices from a doctor for the people who are working in the tropics, and some quotations.
Yeah, when seconded to work abroad, you must be aware of the tasks and duties ahead of you. Remember that your co-workers and local people will be watching you closely, not just a professional, but as a person from another country and another continent.
Mm-hmm. So, in the interest of your job, try to learn more about the mentality of the people with whom you will be working.
Yeah, the fact of the matter is that the suits we have in our country, and but I will repeat it again. The suits we have in our country are no good in the tropics. Line jackets with stiffened labels are practically unwearable in tropical climes. This will become clear at the first official meeting after arriving to the country. Our expert, in his long-sleeve non-iron shirt, his tie and his jacket as warm as a padded kilt, will be willing to agree to anything as long as he can take off his formal attire and get at least a moment's relief.
After several hours, your shirt will be soaked through with sweat, rumpled and unsightly. Remember that African or Asian or any other officials are always smartly dressed. While this might be seen as deferring to European fashion, it is yet another reason why you should never neglect your dress. Otherwise, you will make the worst possible impression on the people around you.
Yeah, as we know, colonialism was symbolized by a white man in a peach helmet. This image can still have negative associations among the people of, oh my god, what the term, dark continent. Hence, this is very practical head covering is no longer worn nowadays.
Of course, that continent was a quotation, and end of quotation. One of the first things you need to do is arrange to get your laundry done. Your servant should make sure to wash your underwear daily and your bed linen once a week. In some tropical countries, especially in the Arab states, servants can be hired to come in 2 or 3 times a week. Yeah, and yeah, it sounds really terrible now, this book, you know, from the 70s, this instruction. It doesn't, you know, sounds like a solidarity cooperation.
No, it sounds like a
colonialism.
Racist book.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the manual
yeah. I have the same.
Colonizers.
Yeah, and we'll talk about it in the panel as well, I think, yeah. But, you know, the other thing is that these so-called Polish experts in Libya, like here on these pictures that we have some from some private archives from Krzysztof Jaroszkiewicz, that they were making about $1,000 a month, you know, $1,000 a month at the time when the average wage in Poland was just $30, yeah? So the most problematic thing is that both individuals and the state getting this, for example, petrol dollars, profited on this so-called aid to the developing countries, yeah? So we have this, like here, nurses, Polish nurses in Gaddafi's Iraq, and one of the specialists recalled that
Gaddafi's Libya.
Mm-hmm.
Professional fulfillment and freedom were very important. However, we weren't affected by ideology or the party, even though Middle Eastern countries had authoritarian governments too.
Okay, and now let's move from Libya to Morocco.
Polacy przyjechali tu oczywiście nie na oglądanie bazarowych ciekawostek, lecz do pracy. I to takiej, o jakiej w kraju niewiele mamy pojęcia. Każda minuta cenna, bo opłacana w dewizach. Nie ma spóźnień ani zwolnień. Codziennie rano mikrobusy Nysa krążą po miasteczku, zbierając po hotelach i prywatnych kwaterach całą kilkudziesięcioosobową polską załogę. Przedstawiciele kraju nazwanego tu Buland cieszą się w Sidi Slimane wielką popularnością. Ich działalność to przecież dla ubogiego miasteczka zapowiedź lepszych czasów. Dochodu dla okolicznych chłopów i pracy dla bezrolnych. Boland, czyli Polska. Budowa cukrowni podjęta w silnej konkurencji z firmami zachodnioeuropejskimi. Termin 16 miesięcy, aby zdążyć na pierwszy zakontraktowany zbiór buraki. Zamierzenie naprawdę ryzykowne, w tutejszych warunkach niemal kawaleryjska szarża. Trzeba było przezwyciężać tradycyjny miejscowy prymityw techniczny, przyzwyczajać robotników arabskich do nieznanego tu szybkiego rytmu pracy, uczyć obsługi skomplikowanych urządzeń. Szkolenie odbywało się często na Nilu.
So, again, I think that this short clip is about many different things, but one of them is also a competition. Because even if we'll call it socialist globalization, there were specialists, the companies from Poland, from Russia, from Czechoslovakia, competing with each other to get a contract in Libya, in Syria, in Iraq, and so on. But the other thing is that these countries, they were inviting specialists from both from socialist countries and capitalist countries, because they were looking for so-called the third way, the third path, and we have to remember
The third path is another X.
Yeah, it's another X, another combination. That's why they were at this time sometimes called developing countries and sometimes the third world, just as a sign of this like new third way. Yeah, but the problem is of course that even if we change the names, etc., the problem is that, for example, this Polish Committee of Solidarity and many different organizations like this, they had to attend consultations in Moscow, of course, yeah. So we're with Bartek reading a lot of so-called confidential memos, and for example, there is this one.
A separate issue concerns the Tricontinental Organization. Extending the anti-imperialist front to Latin America was certainly the proper and necessary thing to do, but the fact that the organization has its headquarters in Havana has complicated the situation. The dominant position of Cuba and extremists from Latin America has turned the organization into a new internationale that places itself above all other democratic organizations and communist parties. The Polish Committee for Solidarity was an observer at the organization's founding conference. But continues to treat it with considerable caution.
Continental magazine that was published in Havana, and it was then sent to all the continents, really, in the same way that the Polish review was being used in many countries. Every issue of the Tricontinental, it had these posters inside, so you can easily take them, and put them on the walls of the. It was done by the students. I'm sure that it was done in Paris or New York, but I'm not sure about like Warsaw, Moscow, or Kiev, because as we heard from the Polish or Soviet point of view, it was too radical. And these images, I'm not sure. I really like them because this is like really strong imaginary, but also very good design, very good, let's say, piece of art, you can also say. And combining with these Polish images, they are not so colorful, they are not so interesting, maybe they are not so radical as well. But on the other hand, we have to admit that the Polish Committee of Solidarity, it was really organizing things. For example, it supported the Polisario Front in Western Sahara. It supported SWAPO in Namibia. It of course opposed apartheid, helped refugees from Chile. It sent medicine and held collections, taking money for victims of war. Founded scores of scholarships and hospital stays like these Algerian soldiers, so freedom fighters from all around the world, So I see this, and I think that you do, even with some criticism, but as a forgotten a legacy that is really worth revisiting today.
Oparte są w Iraku na transporcie samochodowym, dlatego też autostrada ekspresway nr 1, mająca kapitalne znaczenie dla gospodarki tego kraju, została ujęta w wielkim programie rozwoju gospodarczego jako inwestycja priorytetowa. Autostrada liczy ponad 1200 km długości, posiada 25 węzłów drogowych i około 200 wiaduktów i mostów, których łączna długość wynosi ponad 18 km. Wartość robót szacowana jest na około 4 miliardy dolarów. Całość zadania została podzielona na 10 odcinków, których realizację w latach 1979-1981 podjęły renomowane firmy światowe.
This movie is half an hour long, so we stop it. And it goes like this, with this, electronic music, which gives you this impression.
It's very beautiful.
yeah, I like
I
it.
like it.
But I'm not sure if you will stand half an hour.
Watch it for half an hour.
But even this music is symbolizing, a sort of a modernity. And of course, again, there was this message of Dromex competing with other Western companies as well to get a contract in Iraq. But we'll talk about Dromex with X again soon. But you know, the real pioneer when it comes to construction projects in Iraq was a company, it was called Miasto Projekt Kraków. And this company developed a new master plan for Baghdad. And really for 2 decades, you can say, this plan was the formal basis for the expansion of the Iraqi capital, yeah? And the best Polish cartographers were involved in the project, and they were around, let's say, 200 of them working in Baghdad. And their job was to produce a really detailed map of the city and to plot and draw up a list of all underground facilities, you know, like pipelines, cables, and so on, yeah? And this contract was signed in 1981.
Yeah, Max, but Iraq was the site of the biblical Garden of Eden, yes? So the map was also about the...
yeah,
about the biblical garden.
No, the problem was that at this time, of course, it was no paradise at all, because Iraq was already at war with Iran when the contract of Miasto Projekt was being performed. But still, even at the time of war, some Polish engineers, for example, we have the materials from Dr. Engineer Alicja Dorzak. She has fond memories of her time in Iraq.
An exciting experience for anyone coming to an Arab country was going shopping at the market. There are many of these in Baghdad, the largest and most important being Sharjah and the Souk al-Safafi. Souks are cramped and sometimes all smelly, but they sell literally everything. Best of all were the lanes where they sold spices. And the world's sweetest delicacies. The aroma was unforgettable. You got all the colors, sounds and smells there. Hardly was alone, even encouraged. We also shopped at bazaars in other cities, such as Karbala, Samara and Najd.
And at the same time, the shops in our country were completely empty. We learned about Iraq's rich heritage on excursions to see the most interesting monuments. Popular destinations included Babylon, where we saw reconstructions of the Hanging Gardens of Semiramis, amazing temples, and the decorated gate and the amphitheatre from the time of Alexander the Great. Samara, with its golden sheet shrine and the spiral minaret of the Great Mosque. Then also the city of Karbala, with its 2 golden mosques containing the graves of Imam Hussein and his brother Abbas, and many other interesting monuments.
And 1 year before Easter, the project manager launched a campaign to vegetate the compound. The men dug and irrigated furrows along the sidewalks leading from the gate to the office, buildings, and along the perimeter fence. The compound was quite vast, while women were planting sesipa, seeds, and oleander saplings that soon came alive with colorful blooms. Another interesting custom was clipping pigs. Clipping pigs. This was something that all newcomers or storks, you know, like leleka in Ukrainian, bocian, in Polish, leleka,
Yeah.
had to go through. So new arrivals from Poland were always welcome because they usually brought letters, spirits and food, such as dark rye bread and news from home.
Okay, but stop for a second. What about these clipping pigs? Is it like a mixture of, I don't know, of the rituals, how it was done.
So when the stork was considered to have settled in, maybe we can more light. So?
Yeah, but we have a photo, so we can do it
so you
like
can see
this.
the creeping beaks.
Yeah, okay. But we have a light here, you know.
Here, you mean this expressionist light? Okay.
Okay.
So when the stork was considered to have settled in, they were invited to a formal dinner at which their mentor would,
Like a guru, a mentor,
like
like
a
a chief. Yeah,
chief
okay.
would chop over symbolic paper beak with an axe.
With an axe, okay.
With a series like
So you have an
sharp-
axe,
sharp
okay,
axes.
and we have to do it like on this picture. You see, okay.
So, okay.
Yeah. So you see.
Wait a moment, I don't have an axe. I will use your.
Yeah, it's an axe.
And now we need also a basin for blood.
For blood.
For
Yeah.
seeing this blood. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
You can see something like this. For blood.
Yeah. Right.
Be careful.
So it's a reenactment. Yeah, it's a reconstruction of the ritual.
Very similar to this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's do it, man. So now, without this nose, yeah, you see, it was like a really professional reenactment now, because you know, it seems that it was like a combination because you have like Polish engineers coming to country with the Shia culture, yeah. So
This kind of mix of Slavic and Shia.
yeah, I mean, I don't know, but I think that we have to send some more, you know, professionals like Inဃα Γайdarovіч, you know, to research it, because I think it's really interesting combination of the.
Also, you know, anthropologists.
Yeah,
try
yeah.
to create some interpretation. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, okay, I think that because you have to remember about the Muharram, yeah, the month when the Shias, when there is a blood coming out of their body to remember about Karbala, about Hussein and Hussein. So this is like a full story of the Islamic Shia culture. But you know, these Polish engineers, they were specialized on geology and plants and so on. So I have a feeling that they really didn't know anything about the local culture. Yeah. So okay, maybe we go.
Maybe it was a kind of cultural diffusion. I don't know. But let's back to the facts.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go back to the facts. So we mentioned this X, yeah, a few times, because we had Dromex, we had Confexim, we had Metal Export, Animex, and Impex Metal, and Boomex. So these were all Polish companies, yeah, exactly, combining this socialist and capitalist elements. And as Łukasz Stanek, again, as he said, socialist Poland positioned itself in global distribution networks of know-how and ideology, yeah? And Łukasz Stanek is saying that it was an encounter between the socialist East and the capitalist West set in the global South, yeah? So we had Poles and Hungarian specialists cooperating with some Syrian, Moroccan specialists, but also competing between themselves, like Hungary, companies from Hungary competing against Polish companies, but also competing against English companies, West German companies, but also sometimes cooperating with them, yeah? So, okay, let's say that for example, Dromex, it gained reputation by building these roads in Libya and then in Iraq. It was like 1,100,000 Poles working in Iraq with Dromex. And Miasto Projekt, yeah, because we said that there will be more about Miasto Projekt. But now, just remember the date. It was in '88 when the map of Baghdad, drawn by Miasto Projekt, was handed over to the Iraqis. Yeah, in March '88. And please remember this date. Get back to the students in Poland. Check this.
In February 1976, the head of the PLO representative office in Poland, Fuad Yassin, attended a meeting of Palestinian students in Łódź. During plenary talks, he stated that the chief obligation of every Palestinian student is to study. Diligent students who successfully pass their exams were promised the support of the office, while those who neglected their studies risked being deported from Poland.
Yeah, because you know, the PLO office was opened in 1976 with the support of the Polish Committee for Solidarity, and the committee received 2 million zloty from the Foreign Ministry to operate this PLO office. And we even have this, which is like an audit report. Yeah.
Financial statement of the Palestine Liberation Organization in the records of the Committee for Solidarity are found to be lacking in terms of both form and substance. For example, reimbursement forms of expenses related to the repair of damaged automobiles in private garages contain no mention of damage claims filed with Warta, even though the Mercedes in question was issued by Warta during the period being audited. No records of reimbursement by Warta have been found. Okay, Max, I don't get it. What does this mean? Like Warta?
Because it's very complicated combination of some everyday situations, politics, and insurance policies. You know, so Palestinian sort of embassy in Warsaw, it had a car, yeah, that was given by the Polish authorities. There was the accident with this car, and why you can't have you can't get money out of insurance? Because you don't have a stamp from militia, from policja, yeah. And why you don't have a stamp from police about the accident? Because you can't inform police about the accident, and when you can't inform the police about the accident, when you have this accident completely drunk, yeah. So in the papers we have this information how the Polish Committee for Solidarity was really struggling with trying to organize all these small problems, because, for example, PLO people were driving under the influence of alcohol.
Yeah, we also have to remember that PLO office smuggled terrorists and was involved in illegal arms deals in Poland.
Yeah.
In Poland.
You remember that we promised that we'll tell you about Abu Dawood. He was shot in the Victoria Hotel, and who was Abu Dawood? He was one of the leaders of the terrorist organization, Black September. He was the mastermind of the plan to kidnap Israeli athletes during 72 Olympic Games, in Munich. And after being shot in Warsaw at the Victoria Hotel, probably by the Mossad agents, I think, he was taken to the Polish government official hospital. So there was a lot of help. And as Abu Dawood recalls, Polish weapons were the best, were trained by Polish soldiers.
The Poles claimed that they were training terrorists, but freedom fighters and revolutionaries. Yeah, but one more thing, we called things differently before the political transformation.
Yeah, and the problem is that the Polish government didn't treat all Middle Eastern freedom fighters the same way. For example, here on the screen you have a file about situation in Halabja. Halabja is where Iraqi troops used poison gas against Kurdish people. It was in '88, and Iraqi troops used a mixture of sarin, tabun, mustard gas, and this combination killed at least 5,000 people, injured thousands more for life, really.
Okay, and how did the Polish authorities respond?
The problem is that you see, for example, these papers. We have, for example, Polish Red Cross that gave some help to the victims of Halabja. And we have this file from Trybuna Ludu, official government magazine, that there was some.
Okay, so is that it? I'm just getting lost. It's too confusing. Like the political situation is getting impossible to understand. Because in Poland, we have roundtable talks. They were underway, leading up to the first free election. That's true, yeah. And what was going on south and east of us?
Yeah, so in Poland the free elections are coming, but Poland is still doing a business, but not with Kurds, but with the state of Iraq, So the Polish government is mainly about the money, about Dromex contract, for example. There were, for example, some protests by Kurdish students, but the Polish government thought that these protests are maybe inspired by the Iranian government. So you have this very complicated geopolitical and economical considerations. And in '89, the world map was changing, And this folder, these papers, they hold the key, please.
So this is the key?
Yeah, exactly. You have to read this one,
Okay. Concerning talks in Tunis on 7-8 December 1989. The purpose of the visit was to provide advance information to the authorities of the PLO, the League of Arab States, and the Tunisian MFA regarding our intent to resume diplomatic relations with Israel in the first quarter of 1919. I was received by the President of the State of Palestine and PLO Chairman Y. Arafat. I outlined the context and the motives behind Poland's decision, emphasizing historical ties between Poles and Jews. My interlocutors admitted to feeling some disappointment, but said they understood our motives and circumstances.
Really?
Yeah. They saw it as a sovereign decision which was an internal matter of Poland, and assured us that it would not affect Arab-Polish relations.
It's not true, of course. Of course it would affect, remember, we started in about 60s, late 60s, when Poland broke relationships with Israel, and now Poland is again making relations with Israel, yeah? And of course, the coded message in all of this is that socialist countries, they had concerns regarding the Palestinians and other, from their point of view, extremists, yeah?
It's betrayal, the moment of betrayal. This is where betrayal occurs, and betrayal is a key turning point here.
Yeah, exactly. So, 1990, the CIA sent 6 agents to Kuwait. They were stationed by the Iraqi border and tasked with observing the troops deployed by Saddam Hussein in the south of the country. Yeah, but at this point, no one really expected the war to break out. But then, and watch this.
Sahum to silny, gorący wiatr niosący piach i wywołujący burze na pustyniach Afryki i Półwyspu Arabskiego. Słynna operacja Samum była równie krwista i gwałtowna.
3 of my people stuck in Iraq.
Jak mogę panu pomóc?
27 lat temu w Iraku przebiegła z wielkim sukcesem jedna z najbardziej spektakularnych akcji polskiego wywiadu. Kryptonim Samum nadał jej już sam reżyser Władysław Wasikowski, opowiadając o tamtych zdarzeniach w swoim sensacyjnym filmie szpiegowskim Operacja Samum.
Dobrze, już dobrze. Zbierajcie dupy, alianci. No.
Co ciekawe, film konsultował ówczesny szef wywiadu generał Gromosław Czempiński, który brał udział w akcji w Bagdadzie. Zadanie było arcytrudne. Z Iraku trzeba było natychmiast ewakuować kilku szpiegów CIA. Do dziś szczegóły akcji pozostają ściśle tajne i zna je tylko kilka osób.
Te ich materiały rzeczywiście takie ważne? Ale jak wyciągniemy tych ludzi, to nie będą mogli gadać, że się nie nadajemy do NATO, tak?
Jednak, co najważniejsze, Wasikowskiemu udało się stworzyć trzymającą w napięciu sensację.
Teraz idę ratować świat.
Pełną charyzmatycznych bohaterów.
Nie wiem, że to jesteś, przecież nie żyjesz. Przełożyłem to na koniec roku.
To przede wszystkim polscy agenci grani przez Lindę, Lubaszenkę i Kondrata.
Przyjechałem tu po syna. Nic więcej.
W roli szefa Mossadu wystąpił gościnnie Gustaw Holubek. Jako głowę CIA zobaczymy Jerzego Skolimowskiego.
Okay, so basically it's a movie which is like creating a new imaginary, you can say, of like post-communism times, and it's a movie that is glorifying the Polish agents who are helping the CIA agents, but based on the knowledge that we had from Iraq.
Yeah, and first more. Remember what we said about the clipping pigs at that compound outside Baghdad?
Yeah.
So the Pentagon was planning airstrikes against Baghdad, and it needed precise information about the city's buildings and infrastructure. So Americans approached the Poles asking whether they still had the map produced by Polish cartographers and surveyors. Yeah, so that's the map. Only one copy of that map was made, and it was classified as top secret for Iraqi eyes only. But it turned out that the documents and materials used to draw up the map were still at the camp, 60 kilos worth. Polish intelligence agents packed them into 3 sacks, took them to the embassy, and flew them out to Poland. Yeah, but how was it possible when Iraqi security wasn't letting anyone leave the country? So they made an exception because one of the passengers of that plane was Tariq Aziz. Tariq Aziz was a close relative of Iraq's deputy PM who was studying in Krakow at that time. And now this is the most important part. When the precision bombing of Baghdad in January 1991 was possible thanks to what the Americans got in those 3 20-kilo sacks.
So basically, the success of Americans was based on the materials that was
Created
given by Miasto Projekt So it's a betrayal of our friends in Iraq, and it continues. Here we have a letter from it's 92. There is a new post-communist government in Poland. Leszek Balcerowicz, he's a minister of finance, yeah, and he's sending a letter to Deputy Prime Minister of Syria on the subject of outstanding debt, yeah.
Yeah, and that doesn't sound like those friendship they used to raise.
Yeah, it sounds like a moment when the Polish government is just saying, give us the money, you know.
Leszek Balcerowicz.
Yeah, exactly. So it's been 50 years since the establishment of the Polish Committee for Solidarity with the Peoples of Asia and Africa and Latin America.
Yeah, it was founded in response to the needs of the day and out of a willingness to help. It was impossible to remain indifferent to the suffering and humiliation endured by colonized peoples and to their struggle for national liberation.
A lot has changed around the world and in Poland since then. Colonialism is a thing of the past, quotation. Working through the committee, Poland played a part in the First World struggle for freedom and independence and faster political, social and economic development.
Thousands of people were involved with the committee, including students, women and social activists. They deserve our appreciation and thanks.
And then
there was the first time I saw a camel. Guess where that was? At the zoo in Wrocław. I swear. Did you ever see camels in Lebanon?
Yeah, I saw one camel in Lebanon. It was this poor, camel. He was in Baalbek, yeah, like for tourists to take photos with.
I've never been to Baalbek.
Oh.
I saw my first camel in Poland. Polish people always ask me, how many camels do you have at home? I told them I saw my first camel in a zoo in this country. That's the way it was, I think.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.